Hey everyone, welcome back. Over the last few weeks, I've been looking at the data coming out of the 2024 Republican presidential primary, and it's been pretty interesting. Despite his many legal issues and track record of losing elections, Donald Trump is still the frontrunner, and it doesn't seem like there's any Republican politician who can beat him. Even Trump's chief rival, Ron DeSantis, has seen a pretty dramatic drop in his support, and it got me asking the question, why is this happening? And the answer I came to is that Donald Trump has taken the Republican Party's main political strategy, perfected it, and then turned it against the GOP. I think I can effectively sum up the Republicans' main strategy in 3 words: feelings over facts. When you see Republicans out on the campaign trail, they're not talking about detailed policy initiatives. As a matter of fact, over the last couple of election cycles, the Republican Party hasn't even put out an official policy platform. Instead, they tend to opt for slogans that are designed to trigger people's emotions, whether that be positive emotions such as pride and patriotism, or more often negative emotions such as fear that something might happen, like they're coming to take your guns, or anger and hatred such as what we saw with Bud Light, where Republicans told their constituents that you should be angry that Bud Light has a trans spokesperson because trans people are evil, and you should hate them because they're coming for your kids. Again, jumping back to the fear thing. And whether it's positive or negative emotions, it's an effective way to get voters to ignore the Republican Party's lack of policy proposals, because when we are feeling strong emotions, we don't always think things through. And what Republicans are banking on is that you will say, I am feeling this strong emotion. What that Republican candidate said I think will help me resolve that emotion, therefore I'm going to give them my vote. And overall, this has been fairly effective for the Republican Party. And then along came Donald Trump. Now, despite his many flaws, there are 2 things that you cannot deny about the former president. Number 1, that man knows how to work a room, but more importantly, number 2, he is a genius when it comes to marketing. Over his entire time on the campaign trail, I don't think he ever put forward a policy proposal that couldn't be spelled out in 5 words or less. Make America great again. Lock her up. Build the wall. Repeal and replace Obamacare. Protect Medicare and Social Security. And it was all couched in this emotional, I alone can fix it. These slogans were so well crafted to appeal directly to people's emotions, and he would put them beautifully into this wonderful environment of emotional storytelling that really only Donald Trump could do. And it was fairly successful in 2016, and even did help drive up Republican voter turnout across all the elections, even the ones that he ended up losing. And that ability from Donald Trump to tap into people's emotions and get them to look past the lack of details behind his policy and what impacts they might have on their everyday lives really helped the Republican Party add a lot of unlikely voters to their pool of support. Now, this was all well and good for Republicans when Donald Trump was doing it to the Democrats, but he also did it to Republicans, and it won him the 2016 Republican primary. If you remember back then, he was giving everyone a nickname, and those nicknames had an emotional attachment to them. Think about Lion Ted Cruz. He painted Ted Cruz to be the embodiment of every corrupt, insincere politician that Republican primary voters hate. And let's face it, everybody already hates Ted Cruz, so it wasn't that big of a leap to begin with, but it worked. He also did Little Marco, because that's how you refer to a child, not an adult politician. And it made people feel that Marco Rubio wasn't mature enough to really be a viable presidential candidate. Low energy Jeb. Trump's creating that emotional difference between how Jeb Bush makes people feel when he talks versus how Donald Trump makes people feel. Causing voters to say, well, I like how Donald Trump makes me feel when he talks rather than how Jeb Bush makes me feel, so I'm going to vote for Trump. Even though Jeb Bush has a lot more policy experience and was probably better qualified to be the Republican nominee. And as he gave each of his opponents that nickname that caused Republican primary voters to have a negative emotional reaction to them, he one by one got them out of the race. And eventually became the 2016 nominee for president for the Republican Party, and then did the exact same thing to Hillary Clinton with the whole crooked Hillary bit. Didn't work quite so well in 2020, but even then, Sleepy Joe did have that same emotional reaction, and sometimes when I talk to people that I know who are conservative, I still hear them call Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. So you know that when Donald Trump gives people a nickname, it tends to stick. And it still gives them that visceral, deep-seated emotional response that causes them to stop thinking and just feel. Now let's jump back to 2024, and we can see that Donald Trump is at it again. He may not be giving everybody a nickname, but he is still trying to attach a negative emotional stigma to each of the primary opponents that he thinks is actually a credible threat. First example, of course, was Nikki Haley, and he attacked her by trying to attach a feeling of distrust to her, specifically the trust born of disloyalty, citing the fact that she said she wouldn't run if he was running, and yet here she is running, and I'm running too, so you can't trust her at all. And that broken trust is always a strong human emotion, so that probably killed her campaign before it even got started. But the main target that Trump has focused a lot of his energy on has been, of course, Ron DeSantis. And he's tried out a couple of nicknames for him. There was DeSanctimonious, DeSanctus, Meatball Ron. And for a while, it didn't look like anything was going to stick, and he just couldn't pin Ron DeSantis with anything. Even his whole Republican establishment thing where he was saying that, oh, he's with Paul Ryan, yeah, it kind of stuck a little bit, but it still wasn't really hurting DeSantis' poll numbers. And then the pudding thing happened. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there was an allegation that Ron DeSantis at one point ate a chocolate pudding dessert with his fingers. And yes, that's gross. And Donald Trump, being Donald Trump, took that moment and put it into one of the best political ads that I have ever seen, where he paired that Republican establishment argument of attacking entitlements that are very, very popular with the image of someone in a suit who looks vaguely like Ron DeSantis eating a chocolate pudding dessert with his fingers. And the ad is viscerally repulsive. It is just uncomfortable to watch. But it sticks with you. And that, I think, is Trump's masterstroke here. He is tying that feeling of just uneasiness, literally a sick feeling in your stomach, to Ron DeSantis by way of this very weird allegation. But I'm betting that it sticks, and he may not come out and call him specifically Pudding Ron, but I think he's going to bring this up again later when it comes to maybe a primary debate. Because it's going to bring back that visceral unease. And Republican primary voters are going to assign that feeling to Ron DeSantis. And I mean, we've seen his poll numbers drop up to 13%, depending on what poll you take. And that's not insignificant. We've also seen a ton of donors be like, we're not going to work with him either. And the last time he came to Washington to try and drum up some support, all the people he courted, well, they came out and endorsed Donald Trump as opposed to DeSantis. So I think it's working. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see some more pudding-themed attacks on the Florida governor in the future. So I think it's undeniable that Donald Trump is the undisputed master of the feelings over facts technique. However, the problem for the GOP is that he's taken their technique, perfected it, and is now using it against them. And by the nature of him being so good at it, he's likely to be their nominee in 2024, barring some really serious indictment or conviction. And that's probably going to cost the Republicans any chances they had of winning the presidency in 2024, and that will certainly trickle down and hurt them in down-ballot races as well. But the bigger issue going forward is that Donald Trump isn't the only person who can do this. Other politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and others like them have shown that they're picking up on this strategy, and they can replicate Trump's results on a smaller scale with that very extreme fragment of the base that is deeply loyal to Donald Trump. So if the Republican Party can't stop Trump now, they're not going to be able to stop his acolytes in the future either. And it's going to keep dragging the Republican Party further to the right and likely will eventually condemn them to being a permanent minority in the US political system. Think about it.